All right. Let's start with maybe a couple wins. Anyone want to share anything good happening in your life and business? I always like to start with some wins.
Well, this class is helping me a lot. I
Good.
let one of my investor clients know everything Randy and Eric are teaching, and they're like, "Yeah, let's do more deals." I'm like, "Yes, let's do more."
Awesome. That's exciting.
I dipped my hand into thinking about it. I called it a mini flip, but it's pretty much what you guys are saying with like the wholesale part, the wholesale.
Yeah.
And so he was interested, but having you guys talk through it, it helped me to be able to present it in a totally different way. So now he's ready to buy again, and I'm ready to get paid.
That's exciting. It's when the market is cool, wholetailing is really hard. But when it's like what it is right now, and you list something and it's gone immediately, wholetail is like one of the best. It's one of the best routes you can take.
Yeah.
He said that investors were having problems because people were buying horrible properties. So there wasn't really a market. He said when the market is slower, I make more money.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because nobody's buying a horrible property, whereas last year they were just buying literally anything.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's tough to find deals right now. It's like a lot of the conversations I had with investors is like, hey, if you're gonna find something, it's gonna be difficult. And it's not just a look and immediately find something. It takes a while.
Good stuff. I like it. Good
Yeah.
job. Two clap. Anybody else? Cortesa, are you able to say anything? Any share? If you are able to unmute yourself, that would be cool. If not, we'll go to Wade. Oh, Cortesa unmuted herself. Okay.
I don't know if you can hear me or not, but no, I don't have anything to share yet. I'm too new.
Okay.
Yeah. It's hard to hear you, but no worries.
Too new to share something just yet. But you'll come in here next week and you'll be able to share something. We'll all be excited. So
Yeah, right. I don't think so.
yeah.
Stay positive. We'll go to Wade. I know Wade is rocking and rolling. I just got his email update on everything he's done in a matter of like a week that most people will take a month to do. So Wade, what's your win?
I'm still plugging along, getting as much done as I can. I think a win for me, this is more of a personal win, but a win for me is I officially turned down my travel for May. A lot of people don't know I travel a lot for photo. I'm a professional photographer and videographer, and I travel a lot, and I relinquished my travel requirements for May, gave them to another guy. So it's kind of a big win. Now it's time to figure something out, find some deals in this real estate game and get it going.
Awesome, man. Good stuff. Two clap for Mr. Wade. Cool. Well, yeah, my win is there's a lot of good stuff happening. I'm losing track. I also have a land wholesaling business, and with my partners, I think we have like 15 lots locked up, all between Tennessee and California, and now we just started marketing in Texas, Houston, outside of Houston. So it's a good problem. It's a good problem. Now we just have to sell them.
Yeah, it's a lot. I'm making like 50, man. Holy crap.
So it's cool. It's a new business that I jumped into last year, and it was very fruitful. So it's cool. Just learning a whole new arena of investing niche that I'm looking to share with you guys here at some point in the future, because it's been a fun journey learning that niche. I've been flipping homes, in my previous kind of, I would say, career of managing a flipping company, but I've never flipped land like I am right now. So it's kind of cool. I like it. So that's my win.
Nice.
What do you want to share, Eric? And we'll jump in.
Close that flip I was talking about in on Monday with my buddy. So he closed it today. We'll be wholesaling it. Got all the marketing ready. And then part of wholesaling it is we'll get the list side of that. Had a couple go pending this week, which is exciting. And then close the condo I was talking about on Thursday that we got under contract. So we closed that on Tuesday. We actually beat out a ton of people because I called the HOA to confirm that if we closed before the first and got in a lease, so we did a dummy lease, if we got in a lease, that we'd be able to invest it out and grandfather in. So excited for my client there. It's the second one in that neighborhood.
Nice, dude. Awesome. Two
Yeah.
clap. Something came to mind, which I think is cool. We'll see how this transpires, but you never know where leads can come from. So I posted a bike rack that was one of my COVID purchases, a bike rack that I hardly ever used. And so I posted it on OfferUp and it's on this other like neighborhood website. And someone came to buy it from me. Was it Tuesday night? Yeah, Tuesday night. And we started talking to him and his girlfriend, and next thing you know, they're looking to buy a home. Like, and now I'm going to be setting up a buyer consultation with them. I turned
That's
a
exciting.
$60 transaction of selling my bike rack to a buyer, and they're like excited to work with my team. It's so funny. You never know. You never know.
Yeah, that's nice.
In my garage. I closed them in my garage.
I'm just starting to get like, I've been in the business for 5 years, but I'm just starting to get like the repeat business. So my first closing was a little bit over 4 years ago, and I was able to post like the second person that I'd ever closed a house with today. So, but we have people like now reaching out to us and they're like, we built equity in our home. We'd love to sell. And I'm like, oh, this is nice. Like, I don't have to work for the business or pay for the leads. I'm like, this is very good.
Yeah. That's kind of what we're talking about here in this community, right? Like with investors, you can create that repeat business right away, right?
Yeah.
You don't need to sometimes wait 3, 4, 5 years with the buyers and sellers. So let's get into it. So a couple announcements. We are gonna shift gears to doing these twice a month because every week I think is a bit too much in order to even have you guys implement some of the things you're learning. And it's hard for us because it's like we finish one and we're like marketing the next one. It's like, holy cow, like it was a good start. I think it was a good ambitious beginning. And now we're going to go to the first and third Thursday of the month. If you want to make a note in your calendar, same time is just less, right? So the frequency, first and third Thursday of the month, same time. And then we actually are launching or rebranding really a YouTube channel that I had from years ago that I posted a bunch of content on around this topic, really. So that's kind of cool. So there's a bunch of content there already, but now we're basically are going to be putting all of these into the YouTube channel. So that way, anybody that misses, and if you want to watch the recording, we're going to be posting the recording link in the community, but it will take you to our YouTube channel instead of a Google Drive. So it'll be a little easier to find, a little easier to listen. So those are some of the logistics / adjustments that we're making. And then as far as the topic, today we want to kind of just really break down the differences between rehabbing and wholesaling, which most of you might know, but I think it's important for a lot of newer agents to hear about this, especially if they're looking to get into the business of working with investors and understand some of the pitfalls, if any, there are with one or the other, what to look out for. And then we're going to finish with some of additional like tips, just overall on what to look for. But I want to let Eric kind of start and maybe go into a bit more of the rehabbing aspects of the business. What should agents expect when they're working with rehabbers? And then if we have investors here starting out, what does that really mean, right? Like to them from a rehabbing perspective.
Yeah. So when I got in the business, I was looking into buy and hold. It was something that I had like near and dear to my heart. I kind of understood the whole saving up, never selling a property. And then I slowly kind of worked myself into the rehab portion. I worked for Habitat for Humanity. So me and Katie, my wife, we actually built houses. It was a part of our scholarship. So we had to donate a certain amount of time to a non-profitable charity. And we did Habitat for Humanity. And I'm like, I love building homes. Like, this is the coolest thing ever. Like, I'm going, and they essentially rehab homes, at least locally for Cincinnati. So what we would do is we'd go in and rehab these homes. And I said, okay, I've got this bug for rehabbing homes. What do I need to do next? So I started working with, or at least started putting myself around rehabbers. I'm like, this is my thing. Like, you get to take these old, ugly properties, like this inventory that's never going to be here, and I get to move it towards something that's going to be beautiful. A family's going to be able to move in. Like, it's this property that was never going to be used, and we get to be the ones that turn it around. So rehabbing is near and dear to my heart. And I spent the first couple of years of my agency business kind of figuring out, what am I going to do rehab wise? And so there's a lot to kind of understand. Rehab is maybe a little bit different than some of the other strategies of real estate. You're a little bit market dependent when you're rehabbing a property. So when you're rehabbing a property, you're a little bit more open to the volatility of the market. So if there's ups, if there's downs, if there's swings, if there's market changes, you're pitching it out there to the regular buyers of the real estate market, and you will see that swing. So there's a little bit more there, but there's also more money to be made. If you're buying a property at lower than what it's worth, you're putting the sweat equity in, or you're having a contractor put the sweat equity in, you're able to kind of build in some more equity. So when you sell it off, you're making more money. There's a lot that goes into rehabbing a property. And one of the most important things that I've learned working with rehabbers, which is the main portion of my business, is that you're only as good as your contractors are. So when I first got in the business, I thought, hey, if the numbers make sense, or 70% ARV, what does it matter? We're going to sell it. We're going to make money. Like, it's a good situation. And then what I slowly learned was, just because you have it pegged in as 70% ARV, once your actual contractors get in there, once they start flipping the property, there's stuff that they saw that maybe you didn't. So it was really important to me when I first got into the business to understand that, understanding what they saw in the property, but also understanding that we can only do as well as they can get their rehab budget in. So one of the first things I actually discussed with one of my rehabbers is like, I noticed this. I don't know if you noticed this. There's three things we control: purchase price, so what we buy the property for, our rehab price, and our sales price. That's pretty much to a key what flipping is. If you can control the purchase price, get that as low as possible. Rehab price, get that as low as possible. And your sales price, get that as high as possible. That's where you're going to make the most amount of money. Where you can mess up is you buy a property for too much, you rehab it for too much, or over flip it. And then if you sell it for less than or at what you thought you were going to sell it for with over flipping it. So I don't know if you have anything to comment on that, Randy, before I go into a little bit more of it.
Yeah, so since I did a lot of, I flipped over 350 homes. Some of you know this, like running the company CT Homes here in San Diego from 2010 to 2017. And I can tell you, one of the most challenging thing with rehabbing is managing contractors. And you could never get comfortable with contractors. The moment you get comfortable, that's when they surprise you, right? And it's not usually a good surprise, right? So we always try to keep our contractors at the edge of their seat, that they might not get the next job, right? It's not that just because you got this job and the previous job and the previous job doesn't mean that you're automatically going to get the next one. So we would always, and I know these guys do it to this day, because that company is still running here in San Diego, is we would always get multiple bids. Even if it's a contractor that we already enjoyed working with and had good success with, I feel like it's important to always have another contractor just bid against that one that you're doing well with, because you never know. Little by little, they start increasing their prices. And the next thing you know, you're like, what the heck happened, dude? Like, and what really happens is that they mismanage their own business. The biggest challenge for contractors is that a lot of them, they're not business owners. They don't know how to run a business. They're handy with tools. That's how they started. They usually started as a handyman, and they were like, oh, maybe I should just start a company and then hire a couple people. And then they hire more labor intensive people that's all they know how to do. So you got a labor intensive manager managing labor intensive people, and no one really understands how to run a business. So I see a lot of challenges in the construction business where they just lose track of cash flow, and it gets messy. So when I we try to do always, and this is, for you agents working with investors, I think it's important to keep that in mind, because if you overload your investors, you might lose them, because they might lose money and they're going to be out of business. So you basically just destroyed your own client in essence. It's not your fault, right? Because they're the big boys and they should be able to make those decisions. But I think it's good for you to know that if you're a new investor, I think on the beginning, doing 2 or 3 at a time would be max, right? To start, because you could get way over your head. Same thing with contractors, right? We would only give our contractors maybe 2 rehabs at a time, because we knew once it goes to 3 or 4, they usually lose control, right? And things start falling apart and they start drowning. But they will never tell you that until they start drowning. Because every time we would ask them, hey, you have room for more for another rehab? Always, yeah. I got plenty of guys. They'll always say yes. It's so crazy. And then next thing you know, we're like, wait, why is this job taking 3 months? Like, we should have been done a month and a half ago. Oh, well, my guys are at this job, and then excuses start happening. So just sharing from my personal experience, just so you know kind of what to look out for, so you avoid the pitfalls if you're the investor yourself, or help if you're an agent working with investors, help your investor client to avoid those, right? But enough about contractors. And then, so as far as when you're working with investors, or if you're an investor, you got to have hard money or cash, right?
Yeah.
You got to close on a property, and you got to find a way to do it where you don't have any appraisal contingency or a loan contingency. So you're not going to go to your normal bank. Of course, you're going to go to a hard money lender, or like an institutional hard money lender, or a private money lender, right? Either one is cash. And I think this is where a lot of agents get tripped up a bit when they see a contract that says cash, right? And then loan documents get introduced under contract, and then agents freak out, like, wait a minute, like, you said you're paying cash, you're a rehabber that's buying cash, but what are these loan documents? So if you're the investor, I think it would be good for you to educate your agent, like, hey, by the way, like I told you, we are on a contract with you, so I'm excited about, doing this deal with you, but I will be introducing loan documents, and just know this has nothing to do with any contingencies. There's no appraisal. This is money we borrow from different sources, right? Because we can only go so far with our own cash, right? So we can only do so many deals. We always borrow money, either from a private source or from an institutional, right? But nothing changes. We're still closing in 5 days, right? So you want to introduce that early, so you don't want to be getting that phone call from the agent freaking out, right? Like, what is this stuff? Why are you introducing loan docs, right? Just always be ahead of that, right? Communicate. So I see that as one problem that can come up that you can easily manage, right? Usually hard money lenders will lend 70 to 80%, and they will lend on the rehab cost as well, but they will put that money into an escrow account, and then they'll do draws on it and things like that. So we're not going to get into the details maybe of everything about hard money. That will be probably like another episode, but you need to understand that the rehabbers have to find gap funding. The other secondary 20%, 30% has to come from somewhere, right? So I think it would be good for you to, if you're working with investors as an agent, ask those questions like, hey, how are you guys acquiring properties? Are you using hard money, private money? And if they say, oh, hard money, great. How much do they usually lend to you? Like what, 80%? 80, cool. And how are you finding the other gap money? That's what it's called in the industry, gap funding, right? So it just makes you look more professional as an agent, right? By being able to ask those questions. But really what you're looking for is to see how serious and how well planned out is that investor, right? Because that can also open up other questions. If they don't really have good answers, then there is a high probability they're going to look to wholesale, which is fine. But these are the things you got to look for, right? Which we'll get into in the next conversation in a moment, right? What else? As far as costs, we have acquisition costs, we have holding costs, of course, and sales costs. So one thing that I see most agents that I, worked with in the past when we were the ones going after their properties, if I didn't explain to the agents how we're coming up with our numbers, a lot of agents just look at, wait a minute, like the resale value of this home, once you rehab it, is $1 million, and you're offering me 700. That you're robbing me. You're robbing my client. Like, they're just looking at the spread, like, wait, that's 300,000 spread. Like, what do you, so we, as investors submitting offers, we need to educate our agents. Don't assume that the agents that you're working with know this, right? So educate is the key here, where you would say, look, my number is $1 million that I'm looking to resell this property for. My rehab cost is 100, right? And after all my acquisition costs and selling costs and financing costs, like I mentioned, because I don't just use my money that's sitting under my bed, right? This is what I can come in at 700. And if all goes perfect, which it never does, I'm looking to make around 80 grand profit.
Yeah.
And it starts like, oh, okay. So the more you can educate each other, right, both sides, about how you guys do business, the easier the transaction will be, and the rate of your approvals will go up, right, with the seller. So understand that, educate. And then lastly, I'm looking at our notes here, is what to expect. Usually, I mean, I know it's rare, but it happens. Eric probably has a little bit more of those, is his investors sometimes can turn around a property. I think what you said 2 months even, which I know for me, that's rare.
Yeah, so a couple things. One, acquisition cost, or so contractors are gonna be one of the most important parts of this scheme of things, no matter what you're doing, unless you're wholesaling a property. So we'll probably do a separate video series about how to manage your contractors, how to find contractors, how to interview contractors, and all of that, because that was one of the first things that I learned in this business. And I built really great relationships with contractors to make sure that I understood what was going on at all points in time. And I've even had contractors that, like, I mean, like, I trusted them with everything in me, and then they went out and did things where I was like, okay, like, I mean, trusting them completely to the hilt, and then they completely show you something different. Yeah, so
And Eric, I would say if you're an agent, it would be really cool if you actually like got to know some contractors and also understood how to interview them. So you have them in the back of your pocket to recommend to investors, because investors are always looking for contractors. Like I told you, we're always looking for contractors as investors.
we use that for retail and investment, because when I can go to a listing client and I can say, hey, you can list with this person, but they're not going to have somebody who can fix your roof or siding or your mechanicals or your basement or your carpet or your paint or your drywall or your appliances or your cabinets or your countertops. And then they typically stop right there and they go, okay, we're good with going with you, because we typically run into inspection addendums that are 10, 15 items long. And if you don't have an agent that can control all of that, you're spent calling contractors constantly, trying to interview them. We've already done that for you. We have some trusted vendors. We always say in our side of things that we're only as good as our team is. So real estate is every activity in real estate is team based. So if we don't have the best team surrounding us, then we can't provide you the best value. So like contractors will probably do a separate thing. We can typically, anytime in Cincinnati, I'd say the longest we've had a property is maybe 6 months. But we're typically turning stuff 2 to 3 months. It's very area dependent, and it's very price dependent, location dependent. We are typically not sitting on properties very long. Even then, when I just had a investor client reach out to me today, I told him, I said, you don't want to get into a property right now that's taken anywhere from, let's say, 4 to 6 months. Because to be honest with you, as an agent, I don't know where our market is going to be in the next 4 to 6 months. Foreclosures are going up. We're seeing a little bit start to turn. Our inventory is increasing just a tiny bit. In 4 months, I can't tell you if that's the same thing. I can't tell you if we're in the same inventory super low. We're seeing buyers go crazy. A lot of the people I'm discussing, at least with Cincinnati, we're thinking that's going to switch over this summer. We're going to start to see inventory increase. We're going to start to see some of these, what I call them now is like buyers that are just, they're desperate. They want something. They don't care if they've got to pay 40,000 over. Okay, I've been looking for the past 2 years. Dude, get me a house. Once those people are gone, I think we'll start to get into more people who are are sitting out this market. They want to see what's going on. So we let our investors know there is a holding cost involved with these properties. And it doesn't just cost, like, it's not just purchasing the property. If you purchased it today, March 30th, you're almost never going to get that property listed in the next week. It's going to take a month. It's going to take 2 months. It's going to take 6 months. What does the market look like 6 months from now? That's September. I don't know. I mean, as an agent, I would love to tell you that, hey, we're seeing these properties likely go super quickly. We're likely seeing low inventory, but by the time August, September rolls around in Cincinnati, we see that start to switch. We see things slow down. So
I will, one thing I would add, I think, on this topic is, and this is where you need to come in as the expert too, right? If you're the agent working with the investors, is if an investor comes to me and says, Randy, I got this property locked up, can you take a look at it? Which is common for me to do.
Yeah.
And it's, let's say it's November, or let's say it's October. And so I automatically think like, okay, how long will this rehab take? Okay, about 2 months. Okay, where does that put us? That's November. Okay, so that puts us December, right? So I'm like, Mr. Investor, this puts us in, basically you're going to finish your rehab beginning of December, which is the worst time to list houses.
Yeah.
So I would say, yes, buy it. Don't not buy it, but estimate and add another month for your holding costs, because it would be better that we actually take our time and list the property in the second week of January, right? Like, these are the things that make a difference of you being a professional agent, showing your value, and then you being a savvy investor, thinking ahead and not getting excited about the deal, but being like, wow, hold on a second, it's October. If I close on it, where does that put me? And then you're desperate, like telling your agent, list it right now. And it's like Christmas week. And then you're wondering, why is it crickets, right? Well, because it's Christmas week, dude. Like, no one wants to go look at properties, right? And the ones that do, they want a deal, right? Because they know that not many people are looking.
It's a little known secret. We've always told every buyer that I've picked up pretty much since I've been in the business is that November, December are the 2 best months to look. That's when you're most likely to find a deal. This December, we were able to get, I think, 5 or 6 buyers under contract below listing price. Houses sit, there's holidays, there's vacations, there's the end of the year. A lot of money is kind of tied up. People don't want to pull it out of the stock market. Stock markets in general.
People want to sell by the end of the year for tax reasons. So yeah, exactly. So like on the purchase side, it's good to look, but you don't want to be the one listing your rehab, right, in December.
Yeah, and it's huge to know. That's a big difference. And we actually, I mean, like real time, we had an investor who was listing 2 or 3 properties around Christmas time. I'm like, don't do it. And he's like, I need these sold. I don't care. Let's list them. One of the properties we listed, and in Cincinnati during Christmas time, we actually had it was like negative 45 degrees, which is pipes froze. So the house had like 2 showings for 2 weeks, and we had both showings offered, but they were under list price. Ironically enough, one of the pipes burst going to the dishwasher, so he had to pull it off the market, fix the flooring, relisted it 3 weeks later. So middle of January, we had 22 showings and we had 4 offers above ask. That's the difference of a month. Like,
Thank
that's
goodness
what
for the pipe freezing, I guess, for him.
Yeah, I told him, I'm like, dude, don't list now. This is the worst time. I'm like, I've got listings, they're sitting. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. And he's like, I need to list them. Let's do it. He listed it. It sat, nothing. Pipe burst, has to pull it off. Does nothing else to the property. Replaced it with the same flooring in the property. We relist 3 weeks later. We're in multiples. We've got 20 showings. Every open house that me and Katie ran, there's people coming through there like, we love this home. So that's the difference that like just a couple of weeks can make in this business. That's the importance of knowing that stuff.
Let's switch gears to wholesaling, or unless you have anything else.
No, so I mean, flipping is pretty self-explanatory. You can get into the numbers, the nitty-gritty, whether it's 70%, 60% ARV, whether the holding costs matter or not, whether all of that stuff. It's pretty self-explanatory. You're flipping the property, you're putting money in, make sure that there's a gap, and make sure your investor is paying attention to holding costs, sales costs, acquisition costs. In Ohio, we pay taxes in arrears, so make sure that they're aware of all that information. And then we can kind of move on to wholesaling, which is going to be something else important as well.
Cool. So then on the wholesaling side, so most of the wholesales, I would say, are probably bought off market, right?
Mhm.
Not that you can't pick them up off the MLS, because we've done plenty of
Yeah.
the MLS as well. But I would say majority, I find that they come off market marketing, right?
Yep.
Because you usually are able to negotiate deeper discounts. You're dealing directly with the seller. Many times there's maybe another investor negotiating, is competition, let's just say, to you, sometimes none, right? So if you build great rapport with the homeowner and they have a true need for a cash buyer, that's a beautiful place to be, right? So that's where I find that most of the wholesales I've seen are coming from. You definitely gotta realize that, wholesaling will have to be there. The spread has to be bigger, because a wholesaler is usually wholesaling it to a rehabber, right? So if someone tells you, like, if investor that you start working with, if you're an agent, says, hey, I want to only wholesale in the beginning, that's fine, not a terrible thing. Just understand that they're going to have to lock it up at a little lower number, not terribly more, but a little lower than a rehabber would, right? So like typical wholesale fee in San Diego could be on average $10,000. That's pretty typical, 10, 15, right? The bigger those numbers get, then we want to do what we call double closings, which we're going to get into actually next week, which will be our first Thursday of the month. So we will be doing it next week. We'll actually break down different types of wholesaling, right? There's actually like 3 types that we'll go over: double closings, self-funded, funded by the C buyer, blah, 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 all those things. But for simplicity today, I want to just kind of generally want to talk about the wholesaling. And, a wholesaler locks it up. They want to assign the contract. In most cases, they want to assign their rights that they have to the contract with the contract that they sign with the seller to someone else. And usually it's a rehabber, right? So that rehabber who becomes now the buyer, the C buyer, they step into your role as the B buyer, right? So they take your position of being the B buyer, and they have to agree to all the terms that you, as the wholesaler, agreed to with the seller, right? That's very important. Like, that has to be very well communicated to who you're wholesaling the property to, right? So if you're an agent working with wholesalers, understand that part, that's what that really means. They have to get a little lower. Hopefully they're not getting greedy, right? Because the more greedy they are, the deeper the discount they have to get on the purchase price, okay? And then numbers we talked about, and then some of the, actually, you might be wholesaling it also. Some wholesalers wholesale it to buy and hold investors too. So it doesn't always have to be a rehabber that buys the property. It could also be an investor that holds on to the properties and they are comfortable renovating it. So they are basically a rehabber, they just don't sell, right? They hold on. And that's a really good buyer, because that buyer can pay more money than a rehabber who has to sell it, right? So that's where, sometimes depending what if it's a multifamily, then most likely your buyer that's going to be buying it from a wholesaler will probably be that type of a buyer, a buy and hold buyer, which actually makes things a little easier for the wholesaler, because they don't have to get as deep of a discount now, because a buy and hold buyer pays more than a flipper, if I'm not confusing you guys. So I know it's a lot, but I'm going to let you maybe fill in the blanks for now, Eric.
Yeah. I think we could probably spend like the next 30 weeks talking about wholesaling. It's one of the most, for one, obvious things that investors go for, because it's one of the most like capital restrictive investment strategies you can do. I have a lot of wholesalers who go, I want to get into the real estate business. How do I do it? I don't have money for flips. I'm going to wholesale. There's a lot that goes into it. Essentially what wholesaling is, they're the deal provider. They are finding the deals for the investor, whether it's buy and hold, whether it's flip, whatever your strategy is. The wholesaler is essentially finding a good deal and then selling it off. The 2 things that go with wholesaling is acquisitions and dispositions. I've seen this a million times. We properties the big thing with wholesaling is going to be you're getting the property at a low enough price so that you can sell it off where somebody else can still make spread, which means if you were just a regular flipper and you found that deal, you wouldn't have to get as much spread, or you could just have a larger spread if you negotiated it down. So the wholesaler is finding something that has a ton of spread, and then they're selling it off to somebody else. They're the ones that are negotiating the deal. They're the ones that are finding it, putting it together. When it comes to wholesaling,
Hey, Eric, before I forget, one
Yeah.
thing that you need to keep in mind if you're an agent and you know an investor says I wholesale, ask them where they're getting their deposit from. Right? Do they
Yeah.
have money at least for the deposits? Right? Because usually, I'm not saying, because we were wholesaling, but we had money. We just chose to wholesale a few because it's more for cash flow purposes, right? Because
Yep.
it's quick money coming into the business. But some investors only wholesale. So you want to ask like, okay, do you have the funds for the deposits, right? Because some wholesalers out there, unfortunately, they drag you along and they don't even put their own deposit in time.
Yeah.
So just ask the right questions to make sure you don't have a terrible experience. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
and so one of the things we would do, like when we would wholesale, is we like even the property we just locked up today, the flipper that I work with is I will create marketing and then I will send it out to a bunch of my investors. So I handle the dispositions, I handle the acquisitions, I handle the dispositions. So we locked it up, and he's gonna say like, hey, we locked this up for, let's say 90,000. If we could sell it for 120 and I can make a quick 30, let's sell it off. Okay, that's fair. Why? Because like maybe he flips it and puts all this money in and takes on the risk and deals with the market, but end all be all, he might make 40. Why would you push for that extra 10,000 when for 3-4 months less he can just sell it off and make 30? It makes a lot of sense. So the wholesalers, the deal provider, they're the deal finders, they're the people that's actually going out and negotiating, they're the ones that are dealing with. Occasionally we'll do on market ones. It's not very common. I'd say maybe 1 out of 10 we do on market. So 9 out of 10 times we're dealing with sellers, we're dealing with off market deals. So they're doing a little bit more that when it comes to it, but wholesale is going to be important because that's going to be, for one, as an agent, you want to be on every wholesaler's list. I'm on every wholesaler's list I can imagine. I'm on ones that send me deals at ARV. I'm on ones that suck. I probably get honestly 20 to 25 emails a day from wholesalers. And I'm like, cool, that deal is trash. Please don't send me something like that again. But I'll run it because if I have an investor that it fits, I'll send it to them. But you'll want to be on wholesalers list. And then if you're an investor, you definitely want to be on wholesalers list, because let's say 1 out of 50, we'll go crazy number, 1 out of 50 deals, 5% are a deal, or less than 5%, sorry, 2% or whatever it is. Say that's what it is. 1 out of 50 is a deal. That's 1 out of 50 that you're getting a deal on. They're the ones that are finding the deals. A lot of them aren't great. A lot of wholesalers, if I'm being honest with you right now, at least in our area, they suck. They're awful. I'm like, why am I on this list, man? Like, this should be listed at that price. What are you doing? But it doesn't matter, because like 1 out of all those I run ends up being a deal. And I'm like, cool, thank you so much for sending that. We can lock it up.
Think about if you were on last week, that wholesaler that wholesaled the property from Northern California to my buddy. That guy, I think, made 40-50,000 on the wholesale. And then my buddy that did a wholesale made 130 grand. So you never know. My first flip ever was actually from a wholesaler as well in New Jersey. It came from a wholesaler. And then I guess we'll wrap this thing up with this before we get into some additional tips. Wholesaling can be illegal in some states, so keep that in mind. I don't know where you are listening, but some states actually make it illegal. Some states require the investor to have a real estate license. And I believe Illinois is one of those, right?
Yeah.
So just be mindful of the guidelines and regulations locally. If you are the agent working with investors, then you might want to educate your investor clients. Hey, by the way, what you're doing is actually an illegal activity. They might not even know, right? So that's what you got to keep in mind. And then additional points we have that I want to cover is, as an agent, you want to learn your local market. One of the things, value adds that we bring as agents to investors is understanding our market And what I mean by that, of course, pricing and, values, but also marketing, design trends. Like understand design trends, where things are going. Because some of the smaller investors that do maybe 3-4 flips a year, they can't stay on top of that, right? They look to agents like us who do a lot of properties for those ideas, right? Because the worst thing an investor can do is go into a market that I was talking to Eric earlier. I was like, that goes into a neighborhood like here in North Park, which is like known for craftsman style homes, and then they modernize it so everything is boxy and square. Like, it probably won't fly off the shelf, right? People move to this neighborhood for a specific style and feel. So the more you can maintain that as an investor, the better for you on the resale side. So you, the agent, can add a lot of value there. When talking about wholesalers that lock up properties that we touched upon, unfortunately, there are some bad apples, like in any industry, right? And sometimes you can sniff them out, sometimes you can't, right? And they'll slip through the cracks. So the ones I'm talking about, they lock up properties at a very high price. Almost they're like, wow, how are they even able to make money here? That could be a red flag, that they're just trying to lock up a property, as many as possible. It's a numbers game to them. And then they're going to ask for a massive credit once they're under contract. They're usually going to delay their sending their money on the deposit, where you, the agent, are going to have to keep hounding them like, hey, like, where's your deposit? Like, your time is up. That's a common red flag that you'll already start seeing. And then usually what happens and follows that, like, oh, by the way, like, we ran our numbers wrong, or we came up with blah, 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 or can we get a $50,000 reduction, right? And now you're like creating a really terrible experience for your seller and everybody around. So once you get into this industry more as an investor agent or as an investor, you're going to start knowing who those are. And we know, like, I know who those people are in San Diego. Eric knows who those people are in Cincinnati. You're on the blacklist, right? If you are that person, right? So if you don't do that, first of all. Now, with that said, you also don't want to speculate that everybody that submits a high offer that seems a little high is doing something shady, right? Because there's also different types of buyers. So let me give you an example. There's investors that will literally only do 2-3 flips a year, and they use their money that they have stashed away in their bank account for years, and they're like, hey, let me just use my cash to buy a flip. I love flipping. They have no cost of money. They literally put no interest on that money, which they should. Between you and I, they should put some cost on it, but they don't. They're like, well, I have no interest, right? So they use their cash. And then some of them also even are handy themselves, and they do the construction themselves with a couple guys. You can't compete with that when you're talking about someone like our company, CT Homes. We pay interest on every dollar, usually around 8% with no points now. So it's not expensive, but we have costs. We hire GCs a lot more. We'll spend more on that than doing it ourselves, of course. So I can't compete with the other one, the guy that has no cost on money, or maybe they're doing the construction themselves because they have their own company. Those are the buyers that can offer more. So instead of making a quick speculation that this is a shady wholesaler, maybe ask more questions and be like, hey, this number seems a little high. Like, I don't mind if I can, if you could get this deal at this number and that works for you, great. How are you arriving at this number? Like, don't be ashamed asking that question, right? Because you might then find out what I just said, like, oh, well, I use my own cash, or I have a construction company. Then it starts making sense. It's no longer a red flag. Right.
Yeah.
So just learn about your buyers by asking the right questions, so you can kind of pick out who is the shady wholesaler potentially, right? That's just trying to lock up hundreds of deals and ask for big credits, and 1 out of 5 will work, and they do, right? And then what else? If seller wants no contingency on an offer, right, which could be a way to win contracts. This was common for us, right? where my guys would negotiate with the agents, and then the agent was like, oh man, we got 3 other offers. They have contingencies, and I would like to work with you guys. So if you can come in with a no contingent offer, Randy, we probably will take your offer, even if it's a little lower than what the other offers are at. I'm like, great, thank you for that insight. Can you give me 3 or 4 days to get my contractor in so we can figure out what are we up against, so we don't have to do that while we're under contract? And if you let me get my guys in there, we'll be able to analyze it, determine what the repairs are, and then we can submit a non-contingent offer on your property. And I'm telling you, that works amazingly. So if you're an agent working with investors, ask them, how comfortable do you feel submitting non-contingent offers, right? Because if you're a newbie investor, you probably don't want to do that, right? But you could, if you have someone that you trust fully as a contractor, because if they can go in there prior to you submitting the non-contingent offer and they tell you everything about the property and makes you feel comfortable about your purchase decision, then you might be able to submit a non-contingent offer, 7-day close, and now you kind of stand out from the pack, right? And you could get those properties at that point, 10% less, 5% less than what they have on the table that's contingent, right? So this is just a couple tricks to think about as an investor, if you're an agent representing a investor. And I'll let what else? Oh, I know I'm talking a lot, Eric. I have so much to say.
You're good. No, you're good.
And assignment doesn't always mean wholesale. That's another thing. Just because someone says, hey, we're going to be assigning this contract to this LLC, that doesn't mean they're making an assignment fee. Some rehabbers want to partner with different people, or they want to switch their LLC that they buy it in.
Yep.
So just because someone wants to assign a contract doesn't necessarily always mean wholesale. Okay, so that's another tip. Agents still get commission on wholesale. So if you're an agent representing that wholesaler that's wholesaling, and that position is being switched with the other buyer, your commission is still locked in. So don't worry about your commission. The thing you should worry about, if you agreed that between the investor that locked up the property with you being the agent, and they locked up the property with the seller, you are the agent in the middle. If they promised you the relist on the back end, right? So the investor said, hey, Kadisha, if you get me this deal, I'm going to let you list it once I fix it up, right? And I'm like, great. So then you get paid potentially 3 times, like we talked about previous trainings. The challenge becomes if the investor all of a sudden says, I'm going to wholesale this thing because I got a great opportunity. Someone wants to buy it off my hands and I can make quick 20,000. Let me get out of this thing now. Well, hold on a second. What happens to my relist? If I'm the agent, right? A good investor is going to approach you and solve that with you prior to making that decision, right? And sometimes you, the agent, might have to be like, okay, well, is the realist possible with whoever is buying it from you? If yes, great. Introduce me to that rehabber so I can make sure I start communicating with them, and I want to get to know them because I'm going to be listing that rehab, right? But if a realist is not possible, how do I get paid for me not to have a bad taste in my mouth working with you, Mr. Investor? And Eric, you can touch on that, how you guys do it, because I know flat fees is one way, right?
Yeah, so we do one of the guys that I flip houses with, we just do a disposition. So it's either a percentage of the sale or a percentage of the profit. We kind of have a whole outline for what we're going to do. So if it is wholesaled off, typically I won't make money on a wholesale in terms of my 3% buyer or seller's fee. What I'll make is a fee on top of it. So sometimes it's more because it's say like $3,000, and sometimes the property we're wholesaling off is, and this is Cincinnati based, is $100,000. I'd never make that if I sold it, and vice versa. One of the things I do is I actually shop our properties that we're wholesaling off to agents that I know that work with investors, and I know they're always going to buy because they're looking for investors and they know they're going to get the relist. So I go, hey, I got properties, you're looking, you have an investor, you need this, you need that. Cool, take this property, go ahead and have fun. So I don't have a big disposition list. I work with agents that I know that work with investors like myself. I send it to them and I say, hey, I know you're gonna be listing this on the back end. That's awesome. You're gonna be making like, I don't know, $6,000 on the commission. Congratulations. Go ahead and pitch this to your seller or your buyer. And then they do that for me. I have less work to do. I don't have to pitch it. I don't have to explain it. I don't have to go into the numbers. I don't have to go into the ARV. They do. All I do is send them the address, call it a good day, move on. Wholesalers definitely don't want to get a bad name. It goes around really quickly in this business. I've seen it a million times. I've seen people who get in this business and they think they're going to wholesale and they just do a really cruddy job. And I mean, I have people on my list that if they send me a wholesale, I don't care if the spread's 400 grand, zero chance I'm going to lock it up because it's a crappy deal. I know it's a crappy deal or there's something shady going on. So there's not a whole lot, like I could keep going into this kind of stuff in terms of wholesales, but you know, just do things the right way. Make sure you're providing value for both parties. So you're trying to help the seller. Don't find a seller that can list a house for 400,000 on the market. And then you go, I'll offer you 150,000. They don't know any better. And you try and take advantage of them. If you do the right thing, 99% of the time, you're going to be in a good situation.
Cool. And we have 8 minutes. We don't need to do a breakout room. We have a smaller room. So this is our breakout room right here. We're all going to be in it. So I think we good to open it up to you guys to see if you have any questions. Would love to get to know you better, what you're looking to do, what questions you have, how can we help you, support you. So we can go around the horn maybe real quick and start there. So how about we start with, do I pronounce this right? Is it Kadesha?
It's Kadisha.
Kadisha. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's start with Kadisha. What
Well, everything you guys mentioned, I had that experience. So I met an investor through another investor. And I showed him a property and he's like, I'm gonna let you renovate the whole thing down to the studs. And I had to hire the contractors and it was horrible. And I had to manage the contractors and that was horrible too. But I definitely see what you're saying about having them have to bid for everything. For me, what went wrong was we were in the middle, we opened walls. So I did not make the decision. I made sure the investor had the, I was like, well, what do you want to do? Like, I'm not going. He wanted to move a wall. That was expensive. We had to move a staircase. What else did we move? That I said, this is expensive. So whenever we were in the project, I noticed that we had everything all lined up, but I didn't know how to negotiate with the contractors in the middle of stuff. So I feel like he overcharged us to move a staircase because he was like already in there. I didn't really know kind of how to handle that because it was like my first managing people flip. And it was like, and my budget was 130,000. It was a lot.
So this is a flip that you bought and then all these change orders.
I told him to buy it and he bought it. He had never met me. He had never met me. He bought it. And then we started to do stuff. And then he has a lot of experience. So he was like, okay, well, we need to move this wall. Cause it was like low ceilings, but it was like chopped up. But like, I had never moved a wall. Then we had to move the staircase. And I really felt like we could just let the staircase be grandfathered in because it wasn't to code. But the investor insisted. And then it ended up costing like $6,000 to move a staircase. And I'm like, I feel in hindsight, if I knew how to slow things down or just figure out like when something pops up in the middle of the construction, do you try to negotiate with the people again? It's unexpected expenses.
We're in sales the same way contractors are in sales. So like me and my investors set out what our scope of work needs to be beforehand, and we don't deviate too much from it, barring some sort of surprise like mold or water in the basement. Because if you let a contractor handle the cells, they'll sell you on a $9 per square foot flooring that's beautiful. It's gonna sell the house 1,000, and most of your investors will do it. They'll be like, they hear dollar signs, and these contractors are smart enough to know if I can pitch them that your return on investment is going to be great, whether it is or not. They don't care. They're getting paid. They're gone before the house sells. They will sell it. I've seen it. They will pitch you on anything.
Yeah, it sounds like to me, honestly, is that this was a newer investor, honestly, that most investors that I work with, you wouldn't have such a dramatic change order. If things would happen, it would be things that were unseen. But
Yep.
the things you're mentioning, it sounds like they could see
I
with
had,
their naked
I
eye.
had I made sure I used we got a home inspection, so I made sure that home inspection comes with a Matterport. So he walked, even though he wasn't here, he could walk through that, right? And I did videos, so it's like,
Yeah.
Was this a
It-
virtual, did he ever fly in or at all?
he flew in the middle of everything. He did not fly in before the purchase.
Oh,
And this
okay.
wasn't my first purchase with him. We had done another purchase
Okay.
where everything was on the phone, but I managed that and totally renovated something in 15 days.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it was like,
You were
but
the
that was,
agent-
and I opened a wall, but
You
it
were
was
the
like
agent,
still.
So you were the agent representing this buyer and helped manage the job?
Yes, I was compensated separately.
Wow, that's
I
that's-
made sure I was compensated
that's
separately.
risky
good for
business
you.
right there, but
Yeah, and I had no experience. So I just kept saying, well, he seems to be fine,
yeah.
knowing I
and
have
that's-
no experience. He
That's
said he
a
doesn't
tough
want me to
thing.
work with other investors because he paid for my education.
Just so you know, Kadisha, I personally would never want to manage a construction job for an investor. If
Right.
I'm a realtor, I'm like, nope, get your own people. Like,
So they don't have that in Connecticut, really. So that was kind of the thing.
can
Like, there's no
find-
general contractor.
Well,
Everyone has like a home improvement license
fine.
here.
which is fine. So I don't mind you finding contractors or whoever, home improvement people that this investor can interview and let him make that decision on his own.
Okay.
But if you're also managing the rehab on top of finding the thing, there could be a lawsuit quick. I'm just telling you.
Right.
Because if they lose a ton of money, guess who they're coming after? They're coming after you and the brokerage you're with, right? Because now you're responsible for their loss, which technically it could be argued you might be,
Right.
right? So I would just be careful on future ones and be like, look, here's what I know from my experience. Here's 3 people you can talk to and let them bid it out. Let them tell you, and then I'll
And
help
let
you.
him interview them. Just get him the names.
Let him
Yeah.
interview, let him sign the
Okay.
paperwork. You
Well,
could
he
say,
did sign all of the paperwork, not me.
okay, you can say, look,
He
I'll take
signed
in on the
all
property.
of the, like, you know how they hire the people? He had his own contract and he signed all that. I didn't sign anything.
But you
But I
can
do
see-
agree with what you're saying, that he should have interviewed them. Because
Yeah.
personally,
Yeah.
when he bought up, like how much it went over, I told him, well, you decided to move the stairs. I told him not to move the stairs.
Yeah, the only role I would be willing to do if I'm in your shoes is check in on the progress of the work, take photos for the investor and share
Yeah, I
that
did that.
information. But
I let them in the property because they
I
all
wouldn't-
wanted like a lockbox and stuff. And they were just, you know what I mean? So I would like open the door in the morning for
Yeah,
everybody who
you're-
was working and
You're
lock
not
it up.
you're not necessarily in at fault is what we're like per se.
Yeah.
But yeah,
You have to be careful because if you're the person that's finding the deal and then you're the one that's supposed to be overseeing the rehab, if they lose money, they're gonna come back and say, because we as
It's your
realtors, we
fault.
owe a fiduciary duty to our clients. So they're
Right.
gonna say, they owed us a fiduciary duty and they didn't do what's the best responsibility in our financial interest. So you do kind of introduce, I'm either gonna find the property for you, I can help you rehab it. If I help you rehab it, every conversation I have with clients, I'm not an expert. I'm not the person you should be talking to about this. I'd love to give you my opinion. I'd love to give you my contractors. I'd love to give you this person that you can talk to for this. I know nothing. Maybe I know everything about it. I know nothing. I'm stupid. Even if I know literally to a T everything, I'm like, I'm dumb. Don't listen
Now-
to me. Like I
now-
barely got to do anything to get this license.
it's you
Zero.
gotta
I
think-
know nothing.
you gotta think about more like, how do you create separation?
Yeah.
yes.
Right, because it's a fine line. Because I've given some of my clients that wanted me to help them with the renovation ideas and things like that. So I've given them contractor referrals, but I was very upfront, like, look, just because they had a great they did a great job on this other property for my other client doesn't mean they'll do the same for you. I'm just
Preface it.
putting it out there. I was like, contractors fall off the wagon very often. I was like, but they came highly recommended. So here, I would recommend you interview 2 or 3. I'll even provide them paperwork that I have that I've used with our company with contractors when I was flipping homes. I was like, here's paperwork that can protect you. You read through it, you fill it out. I ain't touching that, right? So like, again, I'm helping. So it's almost like I am managing it, but I'm not, right? I'm
You're just kind of passing the papers.
passing it, and but I'm helping with everything. It's creating that separation so they can never point fingers at me that it was me that found the contract, that it was me that was sending the paperwork to sign, that it was me that, you know, no, it wasn't me. I just gave you some referrals. I gave you the paperwork.
Just like when we refer attorneys or we refer home inspectors, we give like 2 or 3.
That's
You
the
never
same
give
thing.
one, ever, never give one. In Ohio, it officially got passed this past year. We cannot give one home inspector as our recommendation. We now have to have a minimum of 3 licensed home inspectors.
Yep.
And it's because so many agents were giving off one inspector. This one inspector would go in, they're doing 1,000 jobs a year, and they would do one really crappy job. And it would come back on the agent because that's the one recommendation you gave, just one. So we now have to give a list to say, I know nothing, and interview
He's
them.
like, I don't know
at your own
anything.
Responsibility. I'm stupid. Don't listen to me. These are the people, we tell people all the time, I use this company. They've been great for us up to this point. But please call everybody on this list you can and confirm yourself.
I know
I like the disclaimers. I'm a disclaimer person. I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Adisha took all of our time, but it was a good
I'm
topic.
sorry.
No, it was a good topic. We let it happen.
You picked me. See, I'm gonna throw it right back to you.
Yeah,
picked
there
me.
you go.
You said my name first. You should have known I was gonna talk.
Oh, it was a good topic. So we had a lot of good shares on it. I'm sure everybody picked up something. So we'll honor the time. It's 2:03 on my time here. We'll end now, but we'll see you next week. So it's first and third Thursday. And yeah, we'll continue the conversation on wholesaling though, and kind of break down the 3 different types. Go deeper into that. So thank you guys.
See you guys.